Everyone ignored the CEO's paralyzed daughter at the gala until the single dad asked, "Can I be your date?" The chandeliers cast glittering reflections onto the marble floors as the Blackwell Investment Group's annual gala began, gleaming with the kind of sterile perfection only extreme wealth could afford. Waiters in white gloves circled the room like clockwork, offering flutes of champagne and salmon blinis on trays that cost more than most rent checks. In a far corner of the ballroom, Elena Blackwell sat quietly in her wheelchair, half shielded by a sculptural floral arrangement. She had arrived early, as always, on her father's insistence. Her blonde hair was softly pinned, her makeup flawless, her gown custom-made in a soft pearl hue. She looked like porcelain, elegant, untouchable, and invisible. 3 years ago, Elena would have owned this room. Her laugh would have been the soundtrack to the night. Her presence, the orbit around which everyone else spun. But that was before the crash, before the headlines, before the paralysis. Now people passed by her, as if she were part of the decor. They averted their eyes with tight smiles, murmuring, polite, "Excuse me," without ever looking her in the face. A man in a tux unknowingly parked himself right in front of her to take a selfie with his wife. Elena waited. No one noticed. Her fingers tightened slightly on the armrest. Behind her, the doors to the service hallway creaked open unnoticed. A small figure darted out barefoot, curls bouncing. Ava Hart, age 3. She had slipped away from the staff lounge where she had been coloring quietly while her father worked backstage as part of the event team. The moment her crayon broke, she had decided to go find someone new to talk to. The child wandered through a forest of expensive shoes and gown hems until her wide eyes landed on the only person sitting alone. Elena blinked as a tiny girl in a red corduroy dress marched right up and sat cross-legged at the base of her wheelchair. "Why are you sat in a princess dress?" the girl asked, her voice high and curious, like she genuinely wanted to know. Elena froze. Then something completely unexpected happened. She laughed. A soft, surprised sound, startled from somewhere deep inside her chest. The kind of laugh that hadn't visited her in a long, long time. "I'm not sad," Elena said eventually, smiling. The girl tilted her head. "You looked sad, but now you don't." Just then, a flustered voice echoed from behind the drapery. "Ava, Ava, sweetheart, there you are." A man appeared, tall, broad-shouldered, hair tousled, breath slightly winded from running. His black event crew shirt was wrinkled and stained with a faint trace of paint. He looked down at the scene before him. "I'm so sorry," he said, bending slightly. "She's not usually this." But then he stopped. His eyes met Elena's, and instead of embarrassment or awkward apology, he offered her the smallest, warmest smile. Then he squatted down, not in pity, not to make himself feel taller, but just so they were eye level. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said. "But if the lady doesn't already have a date tonight, may I apply for the role?" Elena's brows lifted. She blinked again. "Did he?" Ava clapped her hands. "Delighted. She can be our princess." Liam Hart chuckled, brushing his daughter's curls back from her face. "We've been looking for one," he added, eyes still on Elena. Elena opened her mouth to say something, anything, but the words caught somewhere behind her throat. For once, she wasn't prepared with a poised answer or a diplomatic smile. She just smiled. A real one. "I think the position is open," she said softly. He extended a hand, not to shake, but to offer, not as a formality, but as a gesture of human kindness. And she took it. Somewhere in the ballroom, a string quartet played a waltz no one really listened to. But in that quiet corner, something had shifted. If this moment made your heart pause, if you believe some of the most powerful connections begin in silence, not spectacle, tap the hype button. Sometimes the story worth telling isn't the one in the spotlight, but the one quietly unfolding in its shadow. This is only the beginning. The music drifted like perfume, elegant, rehearsed, forgettable. Alina sat beneath a cascade of white roses, wheels of her chair, tucked neatly under the linen-draped table, fingers tracing the stem of her untouched wine glass. She used to dance. Here, not in this exact ballroom, but places just like it. Grand glimmering. Rooms with floor-to-ceiling chandeliers and champagne that tasted like secrets. Back then, Alina Blackwell wasn't just at the gala. She was the gala. People watched when she entered. Heads turned, flashbulbs burst, waiters whispered. Men reached out their hands like they were lucky just to spin her once. But that was before her. Spine broke at C7, before the tabloids said tragedy, before the invitations kept arriving. But the conversation stopped. Her old friends, they smiled. From a distance, talked over her head, fumbled for excuses. Her ex disappeared. Before her second surgery. Even her aunts and uncles, once eager for family brunches, now offered pity, dressed as politeness. Everyone had gotten so good at pretending not to see her, except for one man. Liam returned after, ushering Ava back behind the curtain with a juice box and a coloring book. Elena had half expected him to vanish, like the rest, but he didn't. He reappeared at her table with a hesitant grin and 2 cupcakes. Chocolate or something that claims to be passion fruit. He said, holding both. Full disclosure, I trust neither. Elena blinked, then reached for the chocolate. This one looks less like a science experiment. Smart choice, he said, lowering himself into the chair beside her. Not across, not looming, just beside, exactly eye level. She noticed that immediately. Most people bent down to her, crouching awkwardly like she was a child or a fragile piece of art. But Liam didn't shrink or rise. He aligned. So he said, unwrapping the dubious cupcake, "How's your night in high society, exile?" She laughed. Actually laughed. It slipped out before she could. Stop it. You say that like you've been here before. I've worked every kind of party, he said. There's always a table no one visits, and the food always looks better than it tastes. Elena smiled, glancing at her plate. This chicken was definitely once a shoe. He leaned in. Don't tell the chef. I think the garnish was 1,000 herb. They talked, not about business or family, legacy or how tragic it was that Elena Blackwell, the girl with the bright future, now had wheels instead of heels. They talked about Ava, about how she had once tried to feed a squirrel with crayons, about how she called rain sky sprinkles. She's funny, Elena said, smiling softly. And she really thinks I'm a princess. She thinks band-aids are magic, and that soup can cure heartbreak. Liam replied. So, yes, you're royalty. A moment passed. Elena looked at him. Why? Are you being kind to me? Liam didn't hesitate. Why wouldn't I be? She searched his face, expecting the usual discomfort, the glance at her lap, the too careful choice of words. But he just saw her. You know, she said quietly. Most people talk to my father first. Or my chair. Or not at all. He shrugged. I'm not most people. She looked down, fingers tapping her glass again. 3 years ago, this room stopped looking at me. Liam paused, then leaned on the table. Slightly. 3 years ago, this room got boring. Another laugh. Less guarded this time. I forgot what it felt like. She murmured when to laugh with someone, instead of just being smiled at. He looked at her for a long moment, then, very gently he said, maybe they stopped seeing you, but I didn't need a spotlight to find you. It was quiet after that. Not uncomfortable, just full. Elena felt something flicker in her chest. Not hope, not yet, but maybe. Recognition. And as the music swelled in the distance, and the world went on pretending, two people sat side by side. One in a black folding chair, the other in a wheelchair. And for the first time, in a long time, Elena didn't feel like she was missing from her own story. Sometimes it only takes one person to look at you like you're still here. The music had softened into something slower. Now, strings and silence. The kind of song meant to send guests drifting toward their final flutes of champagne. But Elena wasn't watching the dancers. She was watching him. Across the ballroom, Liam pushed a heavy lighting stand, guiding it gently through a narrow service doorway. Over his shoulder, Ava was curled like a kitten, her small arms around his neck, her cheek nestled into the crook where work shirt met collarbone. Elena didn't know why she followed. Maybe it was the easy way he moved. Between worlds, seen but unnoticed, useful but invisible. Or maybe it was the question echoing in her head since they'd spoken. Why is someone like him so kind when the rest of the world forgot how? She rolled forward quietly until the music and laughter faded. Behind her, the hallway backstage was dim and cluttered. Crates, cables, quiet. Conversations, and in the middle of it, Liam sat on a bench, gently rocking Ava as she slept. He looked up, surprised but not startled. "Hey," he said softly. "Didn't think you'd come back here." "Not exactly the champagne lounge." "I don't drink much these days," she replied. "Wheelchair and wine don't mix well." He smiled faintly. "Fair point." Elena hesitated, then rolled closer, stopping just in front of him. "She looks safe with you," she said, nodding toward Ava. Liam glanced down at his daughter. "She is." There was a pause, then quietly. "I wanted to ask you something if it's not too personal." He looked up again, curious but open. "Ask away." Elena took a breath. "Why are you like this?" "Like what?" "Gentle, real, present. Most people, they fade into small talk or disappear completely. But you," she shrugged. "You brought cupcakes. You sat down." Liam leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. His voice was even. "My wife passed away 2 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. It moved fast. Too fast." Elena's throat tightened. "I'm sorry." She was brave, he said simply. Didn't complain even when the doctors stopped calling it treatment and started calling it time. Elena blinked, but said nothing. Ava was barely old enough to speak full sentences, he continued. But she kept asking, "Where's Mommy's smile?" And I didn't know how to explain why someone so good could disappear like that. He exhaled slowly, eyes never leaving Ava's sleeping face. I didn't want her to grow up thinking beauty was what magazines or movies told her, or that love was something shiny and loud. So, I told her the truth. I told her. He glanced up straight into Elena's eyes. That beautiful people make. Others feel safe just by being around even when they're quiet. Even when they're hurting. Elena didn't respond. She couldn't. Something in her chest cracked, sharp and sudden. It wasn't pain exactly. It was something deeper. A place she'd locked up so tightly for so long it barely remembered how to feel. Her hands trembled slightly on the wheels of her chair, her breath caught, and then tears. Hot, silent, unstoppable. It was the first time she had cried in 3 years. Not in frustration, not in private, but in front of someone, in front of him. Liam didn't rush to comfort her. He didn't reach out or apologize for making her feel. He just sat with her in the quiet. A man with grief in his past. A woman with steel in her spine and a little girl asleep between them. A living bridge made of second chances. Sometimes, It doesn't take a grand gesture to break down a wall. Sometimes all it takes is one sentence spoken with truth, and someone brave enough to sit with you. When the tears finally fall. The air in the ballroom was warmer now, pulsing with conversation and champagne. Laughter echoed like crystal chimes, floating above the hum of soft jazz and clinking glasses. Elena sat where she had all evening, off to the side, near the edge of the marble balcony. The shadows softened her presence, and no one seemed to mind she was there, which, in the world of Elena Blackwell, had become a quiet kind of mercy. She sipped water from a stemmed glass, watching the dancers like someone observing a dream she no longer belonged to. "I'd kill to have her dress," someone whispered behind her. "Oh, darling," another voice replied, sharp and polished. "At least, she still gets invited. Some of us wouldn't come if we were half a woman." The words sliced through the warmth like ice water. They weren't whispered low enough. Elena turned her head slightly. The woman who had spoken stood less than 3 feet away, wine glass in hand, diamond earrings catching the light. Her expression was that particular brand of smiling cruelty, sweet enough to seem civil, just sour enough to leave a scar. Elena didn't flinch, but she didn't speak either. She was used to this. It came dressed in pity, mockery, or condescension, but it always arrived eventually. And yet, before she could turn her chair away, a quiet voice interrupted. "Funny," Liam said, stepping into view, calm and unshaken. "You're fully able-bodied and still manage to be less human than a 3-year-old. The woman blinked, startled. "Excuse me." Liam didn't raise his voice, didn't square his shoulders or posture. He simply stood casual and steady beside Elena's chair. "My daughter spent 5 minutes with Miss Blackwell and called her a princess," he added, looking directly at the woman. "You spent 30 seconds and called her less than whole. I think that says more about you than her." Silence fell like velvet across their corner of the room. The woman's eyes narrowed, her lips twitching with outrage. But before she could respond, Liam gently placed his hand on Elena's. "Let's get some air," he said quietly. He didn't ask. He didn't pity. He simply offered her a way out without drama, without shame. Elena hesitated only a second before nodding. As he began to wheel her toward the terrace doors, a tiny pair of feet ran to join them. Ava had reappeared from the shadows of the staff corridor, somehow knowing exactly where to be. Ill a touch, she slipped her small hand into Liam's free one, then reached for Elena's. Her fingers barely wrapped around 2 of Elena's, but the grip was firm. The 3 of them moved slowly through the gala, past dresses that cost more than Liam's entire month's paycheck, past men in silk ties and polished disdain, and not one of them stopped the trio. Outside, the night air was cool and scented with lavender. Fairy lights twinkled across the garden path, and distant music floated behind them like a fading echo. They reached a stone bench near a fountain, and Liam paused, setting the brake on Elena's chair. "That was reckless," Elena said, finally breaking the silence. Her voice was low, but her eyes held something unreadable. "No," Liam replied, crouching slightly beside her. That was honest. Their eyes met, his calm and unshaken, her searching. She didn't know what to say. "Not yet." Ava broke the quiet by clambering onto Liam's lap, pointing at the stars. "That one's the sparkly one," she announced. Liam chuckled. "There? All sparkly, kiddo." "No," she said stubbornly. "That one sparkles for real." Elena tilted her head, following Ava's tiny finger. "Then I guess that one's ours." The little girl nodded solemnly, then leaned over and placed her head on Elena's arm. And in that moment, surrounded by the fading glow of wealth that had never welcomed her, and the quiet, undeniable warmth of two people who had. Elena realized something. Being seen, truly seen, had never required a spotlight. Oh, just someone brave enough to stand beside you in the dark. The house was silent when Elena returned. The gala dress had been hung carefully back in its protective cover, though her hair was still twisted in its soft, elegant shirt on, and makeup clung faintly to her cheeks, like memories not ready to be wiped away. She didn't turn on any lights. The moonlight spilling through the windows was enough. Her wheelchair moved slowly across the hardwood floor, the familiar creak in the right wool echoing louder than usual. She stopped by the kitchen counter where her housekeeper had neatly stacked the evening's unopened mail. On top was something that didn't look like a letter at all. A folded piece of thick, white construction paper, crayon markings, slightly crooked edges, her name written in bold red letters. Elena, except the E was backward. Her hands froze. She opened it slowly, her breath catching. Inside was a drawing, messy, colorful, undeniably drawn by a 3-year-old. Ava had tried to sketch 3 stick figures. One tall with yellow hair, sitting in a round circle, Elena. One tall with brown hair holding her hand, Liam, and one tiny one with pink shoes. In between them, arms stretched wide. Above it, in mismatched letters written by an adult, but clearly dictated by a child, were the words, "Can you be my second mommy? You're prettier than Cinderella in the wheelchair." The breath left Elena's lungs as if someone had pulled it straight from her chest. And then the tears came. Not soft tears, not the kind that simply rolled down cheeks in some quiet, poetic way. These were the kind of tears that came from a place buried under years of pretending to be fine. The kind of sobs that made her press the drawing against her chest, curl her body forward as far as she could, and just let go. She hadn't cried like this since the accident. Not when the doctors said she'd never walk again. Not when her fiancé disappeared a week after. Not when her so-called friends gradually stopped calling. But tonight, over a crooked crayon sketch and the clumsy love of a child who had nothing to gain, her walls cracked open. She remembered the silence of the hospital room 3 years ago, the beeping monitors, the white sheets, the dread sitting on her chest like a second spine. She remembered waking up and asking for him, and she remembered the nurse hesitating. He left a message. The nurse said, "He sends his love." That was it. Because it was easy to love the golden girl when she sparkled. It was easy to be proud of Elena Blackwell when she turned heads walking into a ballroom. But now she was slower, heavier, less shiny. Or at least that's what the world told her. And yet one child, a 3-year-old who knew nothing about social status or perfection, looked at her and saw a princess, a better Cinderella. Elena's hand trembled as she reached for a blank sheet of paper. She didn't hesitate. She began to draw, slow, thoughtful strokes. She wasn't an artist, but she knew how to create beauty in her own way. Her fingers moved across the page with intention. A soft sweeping gown, a pair of pink shoes, a crown made of sunflowers. At the center, a smiling little girl with wild curls and shining eyes. Next to her, a woman in a wheelchair, dignified, glowing, powerful. Above them, she wrote, "Every princess has her moment, but the real magic is who you choose to dance with." At the bottom, in delicate handwriting, "From your not yet mommy, Elena." She placed the drawing in an envelope, kissed the flap, and sealed it. Then for the first time in a very long time, Elena looked in the mirror and didn't see the girl she had lost. She saw the woman she was becoming. Not perfect, not broken, just beautifully real. And maybe, just maybe, that was more than enough. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind of soft golden day that asked nothing of anyone. Alina had woken up early, earlier than she had in months. She wasn't used to mornings in the kitchen or planning anything that didn't involve board meetings or physiotherapy appointments. But today she was hosting. The table had been set, with her grandmother's blue and white china. One dining chair now had a small wooden booster seat built by her assistant in a rush, but hand-painted by Elena with pink flowers and tiny yellow suns. It was for Ava. Alina had done the cooking herself. She'd Googled kid-friendly lasagna, sliced strawberries into little hearts, and even attempted a bear-shaped pancake. The pancake failed horribly and was now face down in the trash, looking like a crime scene. But when the doorbell rang and she heard that tiny voice call out, "Miss Sunshine, are you home?" None of it mattered. She opened the door right on time. Ava ran inside with the urgency only toddlers had, while Liam stepped in behind her, scanning the room like he'd just walked into a page from a home magazine. "I think this is the cleanest house I've ever been in," he said. "Wait until we start baking," Elena replied. "It'll be a disaster by dessert." And it was. An hour later, the kitchen counters were dusted in flour, and so was Ava's hair. Liam had chocolate on his sleeve. Elena had batter on her collar, and the only thing louder than the mixer was their laughter. They made cupcakes together. Ava sang a made-up song about sunshine moms and pancake dads while swirling frosting onto warm cakes. Then came story time. Ava sat snug between them on the couch, a picture book spread across their laps. But instead of reading, she made a request. "Tell me about your princess dress, the one you wore when you were sad." Elena blinked, caught off guard, but then she smiled. That dress was waiting for the right day. The day a little fairy reminded the princess she still belonged in the kingdom. Ava nodded seriously. "I'm the fairy." Liam laughed softly, resting his arm behind Elena along the couch. For the first time in years, Elena didn't feel like she was watching life through a glass wall. She was part of it until the phone rang. Liam stepped into the hallway to take the call. Elena watched as his shoulders tensed, his voice dropped, and his hand tightened on the back of a chair. He returned looking different, like something had snapped into place. Or maybe cracked. "Is everything okay?" she asked. He hesitated. "That was my event coordinator from the gala." Her smile faded. "And there's a photo going around of us, you, me, and Ava. It looks like we were close." She held her breath. "They may suspend me," he said indefinitely. She felt the words like a punch. "Because of me. Because of how people see you," he said gently. "Or don't want to see someone like me besides someone like you." Ava was in the kitchen playing with cookie cutters, blissfully unaware. "I'll call my father. I can fix this," Elena offered. But Liam shook his head. "That's not the point." "Then what is?" He met her eyes and his voice was calm but heavy. "Maybe we come from two different stories after all." She didn't speak. "I don't want Ava to think love is something that gets people fired," he added, "or that it only works if you're willing to disappear for it." He wasn't angry, just tired. "I never asked for this attention," he said. "But I can't pretend it doesn't cost something. I never meant for this," she whispered. "I know, but meaning well doesn't make it harmless." She had so much to say, but nothing came out. Ava returned, holding a heart-shaped cookie. "Look for you." Elena smiled, though something inside her ached. "It's beautiful." Later, as dusk rolled in, Liam packed Ava's things. He didn't slam the door. He didn't kiss her goodbye. He just left quietly, respectfully. And for the first time since they met, Elena wasn't sure if he'd come back. The rain tapped softly on the windows like a quiet metronome, keeping time with the silence that had settled inside the Blackwell estate. For 7 days, Elena hadn't stepped outside. She had canceled everything, board meetings, charity events, even her physical therapy. Her staff moved carefully around her, unsure whether to offer comfort or space. She wasn't crying, but something inside her had gone silent. The light that had briefly flickered back into her life had dimmed again, and this time she wasn't sure it would return. Then came the knock on her door. It was Margaret, the longtime housekeeper, holding a slightly damp envelope. "Miss Blackwell, this came for you." Delivered by hand. Elena took it slowly. The paper was wrinkled, the edges smudged from rain and little fingers. She opened it and froze. Inside was a crayon drawing, rough and innocent. 3 figures stood hand in hand, a little girl with pigtails in the middle, a tall man on the left, and a woman on the right, seated in a wheelchair, her yellow hair flowing like sunshine. Below the picture was a message written in adult handwriting, but clearly dictated by a child. "This is my family. She's better than Band-Aids. Ava, age 3. Elena stared at the drawing until her vision blurred. She then, for the first time in over a year, tears fell, not quiet ones, not graceful, but full, shaking sobs that came from a place buried too long. She pressed the drawing to her chest, holding it as if it might disappear. That night, as the rain deepened and the sky turned charcoal gray, Elena rolled through the empty hallways of her family's estate and stopped at the tall oak doors of her father's office. She knocked once. "Come in," came the familiar deep voice. He looked up, surprised to see her. She rarely visited this room anymore. Elena didn't wait for pleasantries. She placed the crayon drawing gently on the edge of his massive desk. Her father adjusted his glasses, frowning. "What's this?" "My answer," she said. "To what?" "To everything you've tried to make me." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It was calm, sharp, and steady. "To the perfect daughter, the silent Aries, the woman who stays quiet in the wheelchair. Because she ruins the picture." His brow furrowed, but he didn't interrupt. "I know you've tried to protect me," she continued. "I know your silence came from fear, not shame, but I won't live my life in a picture frame." "Elena, no." She looked at him directly, finally, completely. "You wanted me to be a crown jewel, but I'd rather be a cracked window that still lets light through. I don't want a title. I want a life. My life." For a moment, only the rain filled the silence. Then slowly her father removed his glasses, rubbing his temple. "You've always been stronger than I knew," he said quietly. "Perhaps I was the one who needed the picture." Elena gave him a faint, tired smile. Then she picked up Ava's drawing, now slightly smudged with her tears, and she left the room, not with rebellion or bitterness, just a strange, soaring sense of freedom. Later that night, Liam opened his front door to the sound of the old gate creaking. He blinked. Elena was there, soaked from the mist, her hair slightly damp, cheeks pink from the chill. In her lap was a frame. Inside it, the drawing, Ava's drawing, framed, protected, treasured. Liam stepped forward, but said nothing. Before he could speak, Ava's voice rang out behind him. "That's me," she squealed, pointing. "That's you. That's her." She clapped her hands and danced in a circle. "Now it's real." Elena laughed softly, wiping a drop of rain from her cheek. She lowered herself a little, so she was at Ava's level. "Thank you," she whispered, voice catching, "for not forgetting me." Ava hugged her without hesitation. Liam stood frozen, overwhelmed. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. She never forgot. He looked at Elena. Neither did I. The garden behind the Blackwell estate had never looked more alive. Fairy lights wove through the trees. Soft music drifted from a quiet quartet, and wildflowers filled the air with their gentle scent. But there were no cameras, no media, no speeches, just a small circle of people who matter. It was the annual gala, but not like before. This time, Elena Blackwell didn't arrive under the spotlight. She arrived as a bride. Her gown, designed by herself, flowed elegantly from her lap, parting gently around the frame of her wheelchair. There were no heels. She didn't need them. She wasn't radiant because of diamonds or designer labels. She was radiant because she had chosen this moment, and it had chosen her back. At the altar, Liam stood still, his hands steady, but his breath shallow. He adjusted his tie. Once, twice, then stepped away. Elena saw him leave the arch. She wheeled after him, intercepting him quietly. Liam. He turned, eyes heavy. I don't know if I can give you the life you deserve. Not the stage, not the title, not the world you came from. She reached out, took his hand, and said, I don't need a world. I need your eyes. When you look at me like I'm the only thing still glowing. That was all it took. He came back. The ceremony began beneath a sky that couldn't decide between sunshine or rain. Elena and Liam stood beneath a simple arch of ivy and white blossoms. Beside them, Ava clutched her basket of petals, her dress slightly oversized and perfect. The officiant spoke, Today is not about pageantry. It is about presence, not about legacy, but love. Elena turned toward Liam, ready to speak her vows. But Ava stepped up first. I have something to say, she declared. Laughter rippled through the crowd. The officiant smiled. Go ahead. Ava lifted the mic with both hands. I promise to share my daddy with you forever, she said proudly. As long as you still make him pancakes. Laughter again this time through tears. Liam kissed her head. Deal. They exchanged rings. Liam's hands were gentle. Sure, Elena's didn't tremble. You may kiss the bride, the officiant said. Eva shouted, then clapped. And when Liam kissed Elena, it wasn't flashy. It was soft, real, sacred. Later, as twilight washed the sky in lavender, Elena's voice carried gently over scenes of celebration, cake being cut, Ava spinning barefoot, Liam draping his jacket over Elena's shoulders. The world once watched me disappear, but someone small, someone kind, kept me seen. And that was more powerful than any crown I ever wore. The screen faded to black. But long after it ended, something inside stayed lit. Thank you for watching this story of quiet courage, unexpected love, and the kind of family you choose. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. If Elena, Liam, and little Ava touched your heart today, if their journey reminded you that being seen is sometimes the greatest gift of all, then we invite you to stay with us. Subscribe to soul-stirring stories for more tales that speak to the deepest parts of who we are. And if this story moved you, tap the hype button. It's a small gesture, but it helps us bring more stories like this one to life. Until next time, stay kind, stay brave, stay open, because you never know when someone will show up and change everything.